Can we get started with the housekeeping, Chair? Thank you. We can get started with the housekeeping.
Yes.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the August 9th, 2024 Hybrid Legislative Committee meeting of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. I want to welcome everyone here, our staff, our great outstanding staff, consultants online, people virtual, my committee members, Supervisor Hagman here with me, and the others that are online right now. I'll ask Maria if you could please call the roll.
Good morning. Mayor Locke-Dawson?
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Hagman?
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Perez? Absent. Councilmember Rahman?
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Solache? Absent. Councilmember Caccioti?
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Let's move to item number 1 as our action discussion items. And the first one is an update on the 2024 South Coast AQMD sponsored state bills. No motion on this, but just an update. And who will be doing that? Philip?
Yes.
Mr. Crabb, go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I will provide an update regarding the 2024 South Coast AQMD sponsored state bills. The good news is that all 3 bills are still alive and moving through the legislative process. And just please note that the legislative session does end on August 31st, so it's coming up soon. First, we have the 2 bills relating to board member compensation. There's AB 2522 by Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo. That's regarding Air District board member compensation. That would increase existing outdated compensation limits for local Air District board members by up to 2 times and authorize an annual CPI increase going forward. The bill now also includes numerous other air districts throughout the state, 12 total, including South Coast. The bill has passed the Assembly and is now pending on the Senate floor. Cleanup amendments are being processed, and after that, the bill can be taken up for a vote on the floor. If the bill passes the Senate, it will go back to the Assembly for concurrence. Next, we have AB 2958 Calderon. That's regarding CAR board member compensation. And this would provide that CAR board members representing air districts who currently receive little to no compensation would start receiving the same level of compensation as other voting CAR board members. This bill passed the Assembly and is currently on the Senate Appropriations suspense file. So we'll find out at the August 15th suspense hearing whether it will continue forward in the legislative process. Third, we have the SB 1158 by Senator Archuleta, and that's regarding the Carl Moyer program. It would extend the liquidation time for Moyer funding from 4 to 6 years to offset increasingly difficult conditions surrounding the funding of projects. SB 1158 passed the Senate and most recently was passed on the consent calendar by the Assembly Appropriations Committee. The bill will next be considered on the Assembly floor and has been placed on the consent calendar. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crabb. Committee members, any questions for Philip? I see none here. Mayor Locke-Dawson, Councilmember Rahman?
None from me, thank you.
Great. My only question, Philip, is on the bill AB 2522 Carrillo. For example, right now we have a long board meeting that may go 8 hours. The board gets $100, which is below minimum wage. How would this bill impact that? Would it be $200 per day versus $100? Is that what it is?
Yes, so the bill authorizes an increase up to $200. It would have to be, the increase from the current limits would have to be done at a public meeting, so it will require board action to up the limits, but you can go up to 200, and then every year, there's an opportunity to increase it based mostly on CPI, but there's some specific details on that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's see if there's any public comment on this item number 1. Susan? Or Wayne? None?
No public comment.
No public comment here in the auditorium and none online. So we'll move to the item number 2, which is a recommended position on federal bills. This one, a motion is required. We've got a new staff member, Matthew. Say hi, Matthew. Welcome and go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. We just want to flag HR 7525, and it's a Senate Companion Bill 4673, entitled Special Districts Grants Accessibility Act. Would require the Office of Management and Budget to issue guidance that clarifies how an agency recognizes a special district as a unit of local government, or for the purpose of being eligible to receive federal funding or federal financial assistance. Apologies. The bill would establish a federal definition of a special district, which includes South Coast AQMD. This is important because during the development and passage of the federal COVID relief legislation, the lack of a federal definition of a special district and the inconsistent definitions across the states made it challenging to include these types of local and regional agencies of funding packages. This bill would not remedy California's issue with conflicting definitions/interpretations of local air agencies. Agencies are considered special districts and their classifications dependent or independent under state law. However, this could assist on a federal level to provide a clear congressional intent on whom funding is intended for when passing to the state. Staff would recommend a watch position on this bill to maintain flexibility if language should change during the legislative process. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. Supervisor Hagman?
I was just going to say, if it's a watch, why do we need the action?
I'll defer to Lisa.
That's actually the same question I had.
Yeah, so we've been, Supervisor, we've been working with Barbara Bayard, and she suggested we stick with a watch position so that we can be flexible, just in case it changes. If we took a support position then, and it went awry, we wouldn't, it'd be difficult to change that in the middle of the discussion, so.
No, I get the recommendation. I support the recommendation. But I don't think we need to take action if we're not supporting or going against it. We just say, okay, thanks for the report and move on.
We concur.
Committee members, any more question or comment on that? Okay, so we'll take no action on that item. Is there any public comment on that item? I see none in the auditorium. I don't see any hands raised, Wayne.
We do have, she is our consultant, but maybe she has something to say. Amelia, do you have something to say on this item, the watch item? Because your hand's raised. Morales? Maybe not.
Okay.
No hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. And no public comments, so we'll move on to discussion items 3 and 4. First one is update and discussion on federal legislative issues. Gary Hoytsma, I see Gary online. Gary, go ahead, please, and welcome. Gary, you're on mute. Gary, can you hear us?
There, unmuted. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, great to be with you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You know, the exciting news here in Washington on the federal level, of course, is the $500 million grant for South Coast from the EPA, from the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. This is an amazing success for AQMD. It's kudos to everybody involved in this. You know, as I pointed out in my written report, you know, this is only one of 25 grants in this category that was granted after over 300 applications were put in nationwide. And it's the South Coast grant is the largest grant that was put out in the entire country. And it's really a great success. And it's all part of the funding that has come out of the Inflation Reduction Act. Remember that bill 2 years ago passed by one vote, by the tie-breaking vote by the vice president in the summer of 2022. And it was the largest investment in climate and clean air in congressional history. And that bill is still active and still going on. It's got much more money to issue over the next coming years. So we're watching it very closely. And one of the things we're watching here recently is how some Republicans are clamoring to repeal this bill or to repeal parts of the bill, repeal the tax credits, the incentive tax credits that are in the bill, things like that. So that discussion has been percolating here at the 2-year anniversary, where there's a lot of discussion on both sides. And so we're watching it very closely. We noticed here just in the last week that a group of House Republicans are taking a slightly different position, saying they want to keep the tax credits in the bill because they're hearing from constituents that some of these tax credits are having a positive effect in their districts. And so they want to keep these tax credits, and they're not really on board with the repeal effort that Republicans are talking about. That wouldn't happen until after a new administration would come in, but it's something that's being talked about, something we're watching. So, I mean, the good news here is it looks like the Republicans don't have the votes to repeal the bill. I also wanted to mention that one of the House members who could be the Republican leader of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Brett Guthrie of Kentucky, is also one of the members who's having some qualms about repealing the tax credits. Even though he comes from coal country, you might expect him to be on the other side, but even he is hearing from his constituents about the positive effects of this bill. So we're watching it very closely. We're keeping on track with it. We don't want to see any money clawed back here from the grant that we just got. So we're watching it very closely, and we'll keep our eye on it going in the future. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Any questions for Gary from committee members? See no hands raised. Move on. We'll do public comment at the end of the federal legislative update. Amelia Jenkins. Amelia, go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I apologize that my video isn't working, but I will move forward with the briefing from Cassidy and Associates. Following on to what Gary said. See if that, oh, good, that works. Okay, following on to what Gary said, Cassidy and Associates is going to continue to work with the South Coast Air Quality Management District staff in order to make sure that we get these funds from CPRG obligated by the end of the year. There are a lot of technical details to get through, but we feel like once those funds are obligated, they would be much more difficult to rescind if we're facing a different political situation in January. Also, looking ahead to the rest of the legislative calendar in Washington, Congress is on recess this month into the first week in September, at which point there will be 3 weeks to complete or not the appropriation bills. It is highly unlikely that they will complete the appropriation bills. So we'll be working on a continuing resolution to extend funding, likely through the election, possibly through the end of the year. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has them.
Thank you. Any questions for Amelia? Not here. Don't see any hands raised. Move on. A final legislative consultant is Ben's in for Kadish and Associates. Ben Miller, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. I'm Ben Miller of Kadish and Associates. I just wanted to add a little additional celebration and backstory to the report on the $500 million with a B climate pollution reduction grant. Specifically, I just wanted to mention a little bit more about the months and months of advocacy and education that the district has been pursuing in DC about the South Coast Basin's unique funding and regulatory needs. That includes the chair's February trip to DC, along with Mayor McAllen, accompanied by the ports, the shipping industry, the environmental community, which really set the stage well for the quick sprint that this grant process required. That trip was followed by multiple letters to the EPA that we all worked on with the congressional delegation. I should especially mention Senator Padilla, Caucus Chair Aguilar, Congressman Tony Cardenas, who has really helped the district press the case for this funding in public and in private. They have many of their colleagues running right alongside them, and it's an extremely exciting team effort, and it's a testament to the AQMD staff who really led the strategy. So we're, of course, going to keep working with our elected delegation to maintain the support as the grant rolls out, as Amelia mentioned. Thanks very much.
Is that it?
I seem to have frozen. I hope you guys can hear me.
We can hear you, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay. That concluded my report, but hopefully you heard all of it.
We heard it. Yes.
Okay, great.
Members, any questions for Ben? Not here. Councilmember Rahman or Mayor Lock-Dawson, any questions?
None from me. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Then we'll go to public comment on the federal legislative report. Any public comment in auditorium? I see none. Any online, Wayne or Susan?
None online?
None online. Fine, great. We'll move to the item number 4, update and discussion on state legislative issues. Mr. Quintana, I see your name there. Please go ahead, David.
Yes, and also I apologize. I am in my vehicle right now, so I am pulled over, though I'm not driving. What I'd like to do is just the only thing I'd like to add to my report is just to walk you through very, very quickly over the final 3 weeks of session. The very, very next big event that's going to occur is next Thursday when appropriation goes over their suspense files. They have hundreds of bills in each house. What they will do at that time is they will read a list in each house, down each bill, of which bills are released and which bills are held. And of those bills that are released, if they're released as they are, or if they have been amended, and then we will chase down amendments for you. So that's the next big event on August 15th. Then from August 19th through the 31st, it is floor session only. And both houses are on the floor. And what they are going to be doing at that time is trying to pass and or kill all of the remaining bills that are left that they have to get out. And when do they have to get those bills out? They have to get them out by midnight on the 31st. As you know, this is the second year of a 2-year session. So that means midnight is sine die. That's when the clock stops. They can't keep the clock going like they tend to do on the first year of the 2-year session. 2 important points that I wanted to leave with you, and that is August 23rd is the deadline to amend bills on the floor without a rule waiver. So some of these bills could change. You could have some gut and amends without a rule waiver up to the 23rd. And then remember, Prop 54 created the 72-hour rule. And that means that every piece of legislation must be accessible to the public on the internet for 72 hours before it is taken up for a vote. So that means that, 72 hours before the close of session, we should really have our arms around if there are going to be any gut and amend bills which affect us. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you knew those last 3 weeks that we're going to be facing.
Thank you, David. Committee members, any questions for David? See none of our committee members' hands raised yet. And I just have a quick question, David. Oh, sorry. Mayor, go ahead. Lock-Dawson.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I just was wondering if there were any bills that we were concerned about regarding gut and amend, and if there was anything that we were following that could potentially impact AQMD's functioning or our priorities. Thank you.
Yes, and I could leave that to, I could have Phil answer that question also. I am not aware of anything that is on our radar that is a potential be on the lookout, right, for as a gut and amend. But of course, we never know what the bad guys are thinking. And so, but within 72 hours before the close of session, we should be able to say, okay, nothing this year. But no, nothing, ma'am, that we're waiting for.
Mayor, is that sufficient? Okay, thanks. I heard somebody's voice. Somebody want to talk? Okay, just quick question, David, and maybe the other ones can chime in on this later on. With our bills, our sponsored bills by AQMD, Carrillo, Calderon, Archuleta with Carl Moyer, what's your sense on those getting through the legislative process to the governor and signed?
Yeah, Calderon, thankfully Carrillo is already on the floor, so we're going to be fine with that. Calderon's bill is going to be, that's going to be a tough one. Department of Finance has come out with an oppose, but to be honest, Finance has opposed 75% of the bills that have been presented because of the year that we're in. As some of the former legislators who are on our board know, the finance coming out of POS is not a death knell. It's just one more point of data for them to think about when they are deciding which bills to release. The fact that CARB is talking to members and saying that they're fine with it, and the fund that it's coming out of is not necessarily the general fund, it's something different. I think that is helpful to have them in the conversation, and the decision will be up to the governor. So I think that well, I don't think that we're in a place where we really need to be excessively worried about the Calderon bill and the Department of Finance opposition. It's not helpful, but I don't think it necessarily dooms the bill. It just means that we have to work, and we need to make sure that CARB is engaged at the governor level.
Thanks, David.
Mhm.
We'll move on to Ross Buckley. Ross, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Last month, the Secretary of State finalized and assigned numbers to all of the qualified November ballot measures. In total, there will be 10 propositions before the voters to decide upon. The legislature made a flurry of actions right before they went on summer break to modify the ballot. As you may recall, the legislature has up to 131 days prior to the election to modify the ballot so they can remove things, add things, and then change things. This has really opened up a window for deals to be made. In the recent years, we've seen a number of legislative deals be made leading up to that kind of deadline. In the weeks leading up to this deadline, which was at the end of June, early July, we saw 5 deals announced by the governor and legislative leadership on measures. One of those include a $10 billion climate bond, which they called the Safe Drinking Water, Wildfire Prevention, Drought Preparedness, and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024. I would say that over half of that $10 billion are directed towards water and wildfire issues. The other big shakeup on the ballot came at the end of June. The Business Roundtable had qualified an initiative to essentially make it more difficult or raise the thresholds to raise taxes in California. This is something that the governor and legislative leaders were opposed to, and the Supreme Court decided to strike that down and block it from the ballot. That was announced on June 20th. And then other big news from even just last night, State Senator Marie Alvarado Gil, who is a Democratic senator from Amador County, announced she was changing party affiliations to be a Republican now. So some breaking news for you as well. And that concludes my verbal report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. I see Kurt, no questions. Mayor Lock Dawson, Councilmember Rahman, any questions? Nope. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to our final, Paul Gonsalves. Paul, go ahead.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Always a pleasure to be with you today. I do have a brief update to my written report. So earlier this week, California announced that they recorded one of their best quarters ever for new zero-emission vehicle sales in the second quarter of 2024. In California, there were 118,000 zero-emission vehicles purchased in that quarter, and that represents about a little over 25% of all new vehicle sales in the state. And that's about 10,000 more than the first 3 months of the year and the second highest ever in market share. So making good progress. And that progress since the governor's executive order in 2020 calling for all new cars to be zero emission by 2035, the sales of ZEVs have risen drastically. There's been about 2 million new ZEVs sold to date. That's about 34% of all the ZEVs in the country being sold here in California. So we're leading the nation in purchasing. We're leading the nation in manufacturing jobs with about 60 zero-emission vehicle and zero-emission vehicle related manufacturers operating in California. And there's about 105,000 public and private shared electric vehicle chargers installed throughout the state, and over 500,000 installed at home. So obviously a very important issue for the district, and we'll continue to keep the committee apprised as things progress. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I did want to go back, Mr. Chair, if I may, to touch on the Archuleta bill. The South Coast AQMD staff has worked diligently all year long to really educate everybody on the importance of this bill. We've done a good job of getting the bill on consent through the process. It's on the consent floor in the Assembly, does not have to go back to the Senate for concurrence. So therefore, we expect it to be smooth sailing in the governor's office. That said, we do plan on meeting with the governor's office to ensure that once the bill reaches his desk. So we'll continue to keep you apprised of that as well. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Committee members, any questions for Paul? I see no hands raised. Paul, just a quick comment maybe, and I want to thank you for bringing up the information on the zero-emission vehicles sold in California, over a third of the nation. I want to comment on that. I was just in South and North Carolina, Basil Stomping Grounds. And, you know, I always look for the type of vehicles. Honest to God, for 3 or 4 days there in South Carolina, I did not see one electric vehicle or one charging station. So very interesting. We have 10% of the population and we've got 1/3 of the cars. Is there any public comment on this item? I see none in the auditorium. Wayne, online?
None online.
Thank you. Committee members will move on to other matters. Any member of the body, staff, on your own initiative? Does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to make at this time? I see Kurt, no. Kurt's good. Kurt's quiet today. I see no hands raised by Mayor Lock-Dawson or Councilmember Rahman. Then we'll move on to public comment. Item number 6. Is there any public comment in our auditorium? Come forward. I see David over there hiding behind the lectern. He's okay. Wayne, anybody online?
No one online.
Okay, Harvey's not here. Okay. We'll go past public comment. And finally, our next meeting is September 13th, second Friday in September at 9 a.m. At this time, I don't see any hands raised. I will adjourn this meeting. Have a great weekend, everyone.